Hey guys, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in for what is going to be a review along with swatches, comparisons, and maybe a little talk of some dupe action all around the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basics palette. I was fortunate enough to get this in my mailbox from Urban Decay. A little sneaky peek before it launches in a few days. I want to say it's like around the 17th or 18th of September. As I film this though, there is a countdown clock on urbandecay.com because I wanted to see the exact date. If after this video you're interested in learning more, definitely go check that out for an exact date, time, all that kind of stuff, but hasn't launched yet. I wanted to share my thoughts, do a little demo and comparison so that you could give it a look, see if it was something you want to check out ahead of the launch. I will also have a 4-in-1 tutorial coming up where I show you 4 different looks that I've created and you probably see me wearing in videos leading up to now, all using this palette so that in the event you do go get it, you have sort of a little batch of looks to pull from, inspiration, whatever you want to call it. That video is also coming up as well. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So for starters, this guy will retail for $54, but instead of the usual, and just for a size comparison here, instead of the usual 6 shades that you get in your Naked Basics 1 and 2, in this guy you will be getting 12 along with a brush and a nice sized mirror that actually sits upright. If you want it to, it will, you know, kind of has this sort of range of motion. Overall, really nice packaging. Pretty pleased with the packaging. And it is a magnetic clasp, but a firm one at that. It seems like you're getting a better deal because the Naked Basics 1 and 2 palettes retail for $29 for 6 shadows, whereas this guy is $54, still less than double, but you are doubling the number of shadows. However, in the Naked Basics palette, you get 0.05 ounces per shadow and only 0.04 per shadow in the Ultimate Basics. So probably comes out to be roughly even, but just so you know, you're getting a little bit less product per shadow in the Ultimate Basics than you do in the other Basics 1 and 2. Just so you can see the shade range here, it is a really nice mix of core solid neutrals. All of these are new shades, by the way. Solid neutral nudie browns with a mix of the plums, the oranges, the grays. Like, this is really taking your Basics 1 and 2 up to the next level, which they really had to do because 1 and 2 were very, very similar for me. I definitely went through them and kind of had to prove to myself that they didn't duplicate shades, but just visually opening them back up again, I was like, wow, these are super similar. Not the case at all with this. You get a really great mix of matte shades across the board. Although there is one shimmery shade, I do have to say that. Just like they did with the original Basics palettes, there is the shade below is a soft, satiny, shimmery shade, so you do have that to kind of mix things up in here. Let's talk about the brush real quick so I can toss it out as I'm holding all these up together. Dual-ended, really nice because you get this fluffy, it's kind of a flat shader, but it also has a little bit of width to it, so it's good for use in the crease area, very versatile in that way. And then on the other hand here, you have a more precise brush, great for smudging out liner, getting in more precise places like placing a deep shade in the outer corner or a very bright highlight on the inner corner. Just generally a good balance of the brush here. So now let's take a look at how this visually stacks up, don't want to blind you, compared to the Basics 1 and 2. Just for funsies, I decided I would see if I could create, kind of like I do in Duper Duds, see if I could recreate the same look on both eyes using shadows from 1 and 2, since I know a lot of people have 1 and 2. They're kind of wondering if they even need the third. Obviously you have this collection of colors, but if you don't see yourself using a lot of these colors, you're probably wondering if all I'm going to get use out of are the, you know, really core neutrals in this palette. Do I need it if I already have 1 and 2? So I am wearing a combination of shadows from Naked Basics 1 and 2 on my left eye. You're right, as you view this, I think. It's this one. This is the one that has the Basics 1 and 2. And then I tried to recreate a similar shade using shadows from the Ultimate Basics palette on my right eye. So keep that in mind if you were kind of thinking, oh, your eyes are looking a little different, a little wonky today. That's why. Otherwise, if you didn't notice, keep that in mind as I talk about these shadows. So this also sounds like a good place to talk about the shades that are dupes. I would say in swatch, all of these are close, but especially when worn, none of these are exact. I think maybe from afar you can, but you know, like this has more of a pinky or ashy hue to it, whereas this is more neutral and brown. So just personal opinion, I do think they look similar from afar, but as I was doing the look, and you'll see me actually doing it here, comparing the shades, I definitely think there is a big difference up close. like people might be looking at you weird if you were to do this and wear it around for the day. So the shades that match most closely are Skimp from the Naked Basics 2 and Blow. Those are the two soft cream shimmery shades. Then there is Stark from the Basics 2 and Nude. Stark is a little bit more ashy, whereas Nude is a little bit more warm. Then there is Cover, once again from Naked Basics 2, and Commando from the Ultimate Basics. I would say Commando here from the Ultimate Basics is a little bit more ashy, a little bit cooler, more purple leaning, whereas Cover is a little deeper, a little bit warmer. Then there is Foxy from the original Naked Basics and Pregame from the Ultimate Basics. And those are pretty stinking similar. I will say texture-wise, Pregame from the Ultimate Basics is a little bit creamier than Foxy. And then you have the Matte Black Crave from the original Naked Basics and Blackjack from the Ultimate Naked Basics. I know I'm saying Naked and Basics so frequently in this video, I'm gonna get tripped up around here somewhere. So stay with me, guys. I hope I can keep it all straight. But basically, those two are very similar. However, Blackjack has a hint of brown in it. It's not a pure stark black like Crave is. It has a hint of something in there, but I will say that on the eyes, they do look very, very similar. So those are really, I mean, despite when you look at this, I'm even compelled to say it looks the same. Do you really need another neutral palette? But I gotta be honest, guys, there are differences. There are major differences. And especially doing this, although I did notice beforehand, but this really drove the point home for me that there are some formula differences as well. Going through these in the Ultimate Basics, I just thought these are a little bit drier, a little bit more chalky. They're very firmly pressed, but they don't kick up nearly as much fallout as some from the original Naked Basics 1 and 2 palettes. Not a bad thing, but not my favorite matte formula, and so that led me back to the ingredients deck. Luckily, I kept the Ultimate Basics box, and then I did some digging around online for the ingredients to the first and second Basics palette, and I was kind of surprised with what I came up with. Basically, the first and second Basics palette have a whole lot less in common than I thought formula-wise. The Naked Basics 2 has kaolin in the shadows, and I don't think any in the 1 do, and certainly none in the Ultimate Basics do. The Naked Basics 2 also has mica in it, whereas the 1, or at least is the one of the first few ingredients in the deck, whereas the 1 and 3 have talc. They're talc based. Naked 2 is talc based, but right next to talc is mica in the ingredient deck, and that is nowhere to be found in the 1 or 3. Beyond that, the differences seem to be with any emulsifying agents in there. The binding agents seem to be different, and I think that must be what is chalking up to the difference here. But I definitely do notice there is a difference in the formula. For the most part, these are pretty good performers, although I do think you'll see when I come out with my 4-in-1 tutorial, some of the shades do skip across the eye. They're not as richly pigmented, as you'll see when I do the comparison. Like when I go in with, from the Naked Basics 2, the shade, is it Stark? I believe it's the shade Stark, and I have it on the lid. Just the pigmentation there and how smoothly and evenly it applies, it's like night and day between that and the Ultimate Basics palette. So I will say I prefer the shadow formula, specifically in Naked 2, but also Naked 1 over the Ultimate Basics palette. But having said all that, it's not a bad formula by any means. It's just not my favorite out there. Speaking of similar formulas and similar palettes, I wanted to compare these to two other all matte palettes I have in my collection. The one, let's start with the one that I think is similar but not identical. It is one of this is one of my favorite all matte formulas. It's the IT Cosmetics Naturally Pretty palette. Longtime love of mine, and just in general, I think you'll be able to see the color palettes here I hope you'll be able to see. Let's make this easier. Oh, so much glare! The color palettes, very, very similar here. You have that mix of plums, the oranges, the true neutrals, the cool neutrals, the warm neutrals. You know, it's all very, very similar here. There are a few more shades in the Naturally Pretty palette, so you get like a lighter, like a blue, and then kind of a camely, that sunrise shade. There are a few additional colors here, and you get the Transforming Pearl, although I do have to say Blow is very similar to that as well. But similar kind of concept. But nothing matches it quite like the Stila Eyes Are the Window shadow palette. Eyes Are the Window to the Mind. Is that how you say that? You'll see it. You'll know what I'm talking about once I open this up. This guy, I mean, down to the kind of format, you know what I'm talking about? Like very, very similar shade range here, but I have to say much prefer the Ultimate Basics formula to the Stila shadow formula. These are a little drier, a lot drier actually. They skip around a lot more by comparison. And so I just find I would recommend the Ultimate Basics over the Stila. However, the Ultimate Basics shadow formula is not quite as creamy as the Naturally Pretty formula. So all in all, I have to say, final thoughts, I do think you could pick this up and not worry about completely duplicating Naked 1 and Naked 2, if that's your concern here. I think this is an awesome combination of shades. They really play nicely together to create some beautiful versatile looks, especially with the addition of, you know, the actual colors in there, the orange, the blue, the plum, things like that. I think this is a great kind of core palette to have in your collection. However, given how similar it is to other palettes I have, I'm not calling it a must-have. I'm not saying it's super unique. I don't think you must run out and get this once it launches. If it's something that appeals to you and you don't have the other two palettes that I just talked about here, by all means, I think this would be a great matte complement to your everyday shimmer shadows or whatever else you're working with. It's just a great everyday palette, but you can really build up the drama because it has those colors, those deep, rich colors. But yeah, I wouldn't say I feel super strongly that you absolutely need it. Not quite like I did when the Naked 1 and 2 Basics launched, which were like, oh my gosh, your core neutrals that you gotta have every day, like take this around with you in addition to your shimmers or whatever colors you like to wear because they're must-haves. This could definitely be that palette for you if you don't have the Naked 1 and 2 Basics, but given that I know a lot of people probably do, especially because it is a cult name for Urban Decay, you might want to skip this if you're not into the colors. So I feel I have been wishy-washy for long enough. That is all I'm going to say on this palette. Really hope you enjoyed this review. Hope the comparisons and all the blabbering on I've done here is useful, at least helps you a little bit. Like I said, if you're interested in it, go check out the Urban Decay website, or I'm sure it will launch elsewhere like Sephora and Ulta and things like that. I'll link to all those below. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the palette if you're going to be picking it up. Stay tuned for that 4-in-1 look video, because even if you don't get this palette, you can dupe it out if you own the other two palettes I talked about, or if you just happen to have similar matte shadows on hand. So stay tuned for that as well, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.